What is up, Los Angeles, and welcome back to your Rams LAFB Show. I'm your host, Ryan Anderson, joined today by a very special guest. Super excited to have him on here. Defensive guru, Match Quarters, Substack, Let's Talk Ball podcast. Cody Alexander, welcome to the show. How we doing? How was your Super Bowl?
Yeah, doing great. Had a great look. I was enjoying the Super Bowl. My in-laws and everybody around me were not, because it was a boring game, but I was fully engrossed in what was going on.
I'm right there with you. I was like that last Jason Myers punt pinned him back at the 5. I was like, did you see that? And they were like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, it's a punt. Cool.
Yeah, I'm glad to be joined by one of the sickos out there. Obviously, one of the defensive gurus with his great Substack. And I mean, coming out of this Super Bowl, you got to be super excited. Defense kind of wins the game for the Seattle Seahawks. Not a bad showing from the defense on the other side, from the Patriots as well. And I just wanted to have you on to talk a little bit about this Rams defense. And if we got some extra time, talk a little bit of Kliff Kingsbury as well. He's likely headed there as the latest reports have come out that is going to happen. Kliff Kingsbury to the Rams. But we got the Rams knocking on the door to go to the Super Bowl. And, a lot of people are pointing to the defense as one of the things that held them back from making that happen. They are currently one of the top favorites to win the Super Bowl, number 2 behind these Seattle Seahawks. But let's talk a little bit about this defense. Chris Shula, the cornerbacks were obviously a big topic of conversation among Rams fans. One of my favorite tweets coming out of the game was a mock draft that used 10 picks to pick 10 cornerbacks. Just kind of talk a little bit of Rams defense and what they need to improve on in 2026.
Yeah, this is a defense that was very much built kind of in the same mold as like what you would see from Brian Flores with the Vikings. And the way that I mean that is it's so front heavy, where the front has to do all the heavy lifting, that when the front isn't doing any heavy lifting, the secondary now has to react, and they have to play a little bit longer, that like half second longer. Then we start seeing a lot of these open receivers. And so now the Rams are not blitzing anywhere near or loading the box anywhere near the Vikings are, but it's almost the kind of same philosophy of like, we're going to win with these 5 guys up front. But when we don't win with them, or we get really passive, I thought the last game against the Seahawks was one of the most passive game plans that I've seen Shula put together. There just was not a lot of movement on the back end or the front end. And they just kind of got caught against a team that, and a hot quarterback who was like, oh, I can just throw into space. And I think it really exposed it. It is funny that you say like the corners. That's really one of the areas on this defense that really needs to get fixed. And I think going into the offseason, especially with a guy like Cam Curl, who's going to be up for another contract, you need to make sure that you keep him. But then also you have to find ways to get corners, or at least have some sort of a premier corner, because you haven't had one since Ramsey. And it really changes your defense when you have one side of the ball that you can just kind of lock down.
Yeah, I mean, one of the takeaways from the Super Bowl for me was get you a Christian Gonzalez. Is there, Mansur Delane, he's probably going to be the number 1 cornerback off of the board when draft time comes. Is there a cornerback in this draft that you can look at that, is that caliber of player, would you say?
Yeah, he's really the only one I've really studied at. I'm not a big draft guy. I don't really get into the draft, but I know that you just need to find, this system is very particular as well with corners. It's not just going to be hey, we just need a guy that can lock it up. We don't need an on-ball corner. You need really a guy that's a multi-tool guy. And so I think those guys tend to kind of be harder to develop and harder to find. I don't think a rookie corner comes in tomorrow and is just like, oh, it's a game changer, because it's hard to get those premium guys, especially early. I think you can change the game a little bit if we go for a nickel, right? Like if you get a nickel defender in that late first, early second, something like that. But that's one of the things that they're really going to have to do. The Rams do a great job with their scouting department, because instead of saying who can fix this, it's what kind of corner can fix it. And somebody that can play off ball, somebody that can play zone, somebody that can play all of the coverages. We can lock him up. He can play cover 3. He can play quarters. He has good vision and he can attack the ball. And I think that's more of the question of like who can fit in here and not necessarily like, let's just go get a guy. Now, I say that, and if you have a guy where you can put him into the boundary or put him away from the passing strength and really lock down that guy, it does change a little bit of what you can do. But with the Patriots and Christian Gonzalez, that's a man-heavy defense that really had him locked down and kind of isolated on the backside.
Yeah. So with, you mentioned, Shula and the blitz rate in the last game. That was something that I was calling out too, because, Sam Darnold is who he is. And we've seen this Rams team really fluster him in the pocket with that extra pressure. Schematically, scheming up the defensive line, to the max, those simulated pressures, those stunts, all of that Chris Shula was tying into the defense schematically, is that something that can just kind of get a bit stale as the season goes along? Because it seemed like the pass rush as the season went along became less effective. And I don't know if that's the complementary nature of the front and the back working together, or if it was just something that, one of the things John Ledyard there over at the Read Optional podcast talked about was, Jared Verse, obviously pound for pound, one of the strongest defensive linemen out there. And obviously pressure is his game. Sacks, we got to see those come eventually. Maybe we'll see. But, the surprise element of the defensive line has to accompany that. So just what are your thoughts on just kind of on that, schematically, is it stale? Is it, do they need to inject something else other than talent on that side?
I think they need depth. And I think that's the problem. You go and you look at the past 2 Super Bowls, the Eagles and the Seahawks. What have they been able to do? Win with 4. Why were they able to win with 4? Because they could constantly rotate guys on that edge. I think the Seahawks are a great example of being able to kind of win in the aggregate, of meaning that we're going to have 3 or 4 guys in that edge piece that are just going to be able to rotate and they can keep fresh and then we can keep going. I think when you look at the Rams, it's very much 11 people on the field are the 11 people on the field. And yeah, we may have base and we may take off Quentin Lake and he may not be we may put him, take him off, put another linebacker on there, but those guys up front are those guys up front. And the guys that are coming in aren't necessarily adding any value. They're not, also getting, sacks. I think what Seahawks had multiple guys, I think 8 guys with double digit pressures, definitely, up there in sacks. So to me, I think that's why you see the, kind of a degrading of the efficiency towards the end of the season, is because the NFL season's a long season. It's 18 weeks, 17 games. Then you're in the playoffs. You're playing more games. The level is amped up. You're not getting any of it. So at the end of the day, look, the football and really the NFL and really any level is about attrition. How healthy can you stay? How fresh can you stay? And I think if you look at the Rams, they need more depth. They need somebody that can come in there and give Verse a breather. Just even if it's just for a cut, but you're not losing anything doing that. And I think the problem that you have with the Rams right now is like R5 is really good. But then in the fourth quarter, or as we get longer in the season, we're moving and we're stunting and we're doing all these things and we're just not getting that finish. And it's a lot of it's because we just don't have the depth.
Yeah, they got Josiah Stewart, who I thought flashed some nice things throughout the season. Definitely, Nick Hampton, a draft, low round draft pick, not moving into that position very well. And I would say Laurel Murchison, they're trying to do the Michael Hoyt trick with him, moving him from the inside to the outside, just to get some depth and quality pass rush when those guys need a breather for sure. And that's leads me to a kind of a question I've been knocking around all season. A lot of rookie contracts on this roster along the defensive line, and they're going to have to pay some of all of, if not all of those guys in the next few years. Kobe Turner and Byron Young being the guys most presently. If I could just have you rank those 4 guys in terms of who you would want to sign. So you got Jared Verse, Kobe Turner, Byron Young, and Braden Fisk, all just coming up for contracts in the next couple of years. I mean, how would you put that pecking order?
Yeah, definitely think you got to build inside out. I think, look, my philosophy around the draft has always been you draft an edge and you draft a corner every single year. I don't think I just think you just keep constantly drafting those guys because their market efficiency is not going to be there. I think it's hard to find a really good corner. You just keep drafting them, especially like if in that second and third round, like if you can just kind of get these higher level corners, eventually one of them's going to hit. And now, okay, sweet. Now we got a boundary corner. We'll pay that guy. Now I just got to find a field corner. Maybe I can bump one into the nickel. I think at edge, it's kind of the same thing. You just constantly rotate these guys because if one hits and it may not necessarily fit into your cap space model, you have trade leverage. And then now we can kind of move him on. I mean, we see this. I live in Dallas, so with the Micah Parsons thing, everybody here is freaking out. But now you kind of look at it and it's like, okay, well, they wouldn't be able to get a guy like Pickens and with CeeDee Lamb. They wouldn't be able to have kind of the Quinnen Williams on the inside. Now they're building inside out. So it looks if there's a little bit of a different vibe. And so I think like that's the thing that you have to remember when you're building these teams out is that those edges are awesome. And if you can get one that's just a wrecker like a Myles Garrett, you pay him. But I don't know if Jared Verse is that guy yet. Now, if I can get two interior defensive linemen that can play really well, like a Fisk and a Turner, I do think that in their 5-man front, they need to have a nose that can really play. I thought Poona Ford was awesome this year and really one of the more underrated noses in the NFL. So you kind of – the nose doesn't necessarily have to be a premium guy, but your three techs can do. And then if you can have a guy that can play over the center – those two guys, we saw it in the Super Bowl. I mean, look, the interior defensive line play and really in the playoffs, just in general, the interior defensive line play for the teams that were winning, you usually won if you have interior defensive line play. And so I think you start inside out. You constantly are drafting edges, and then you're looking at ways of maybe we can find a hybrid outside linebacker like the Eagles have been able to find with like a Zach Bonner or Jihad Campbell or Frankie Luvu with the Commanders that we can find that can kind of, hey, maybe play opposite of this premium edge that we have. So I think Verse is up there. You need to sign him, but the sack production isn't necessarily there to where you want to pay him a premium because he's not necessarily a finisher. And maybe next year he blows everybody away. But there's really only about 3 or 4 edges where you're just like, yeah, I'll pay whatever to have them. Otherwise, you need to draft one every year.
Yeah. Sounds good to me. I mean, I'm just so interested to see where this defense is going to go. It's been the lowest paid defense in the league for the last couple of years. And, Aubrey Pleasant might move on. Chris Shula is going to stick around for another year after being a candidate, for head coaching jobs. So, pretty interesting times over here in Los Angeles.
If you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt, medical bills, or personal loans, help is here. More and more Americans turn to credit cards to get by. National Debt Relief is helping qualified clients reduce what they owe. For many, continuing to struggle making minimum monthly payments could take years to pay off. National Debt Relief has already helped over 550,000 Americans reduce their debt by negotiating directly with their creditors. When you call, you'll be amazed at how much you can save and how quickly you can become debt-free. If you want off the debt treadmill, visit nationaldebtrelief.com today. You don't need to declare bankruptcy, and you may qualify for significant debt relief. To find out what savings you may qualify for, simply visit nationaldebtrelief.com. That's nationaldebtrelief.com.
Let's move to Kliff Kingsbury, who's joining this staff. It looks like he's got this reputation, this run pass option guy, spread, air raid, and he's in the pros. He's always had a very, very, very mobile quarterback as well. Some confusion out there about what he adds to this offense. Sean McVay has moved to 13 personnel. We saw a ton of that this season, which looks very different than what people think of the Kliff Kingsbury offense. So what in your mind is he bringing to this coaching staff?
I think if you look at this system, what is the one thing that this system is lacking? If there's an area within this system, this particular offensive system structure, everybody kind of tells you, stop the run. They have no drop back passing. There's not a lot of creativity in it. They don't know how to really manipulate the space. I mean, that's been the MO on the 49ers forever, is get them into playing an 11 personnel game. The Rams have been, pretending they're 11 personnel, but really running 12 personnel. Now they finally have tight ends. So now they're really in 12 personnel, so it's like, I think he adds a lot of value because there's some things that they can add in, especially now that everybody's playing zone. Kliff Kingsbury, look, he played air raid. Everybody played quarters against Kliff Kingsbury, everybody. And when he played cover 3, they isolated you and it was bombs away. So I think that he adds an element into the passing game that maybe McVay just doesn't necessarily have. I also think, too, the running game that he developed with Anthony Lynn with the Commanders, yes, it was with a mobile quarterback, but a lot of the pin pull structures, a lot of those gap scheme structures that McVay has really been leaning into really this year, kind of gives you an element of how can we build better perimeter screens? What are some more creative ways that we can kind of use the leverage of the defense against them to then get the ball a little bit down into these intermediate pockets, hit these receivers on the run? Look, this system is one of the best at creating YAC, which is yards after catch. You're just amplifying that by getting them the ball a little bit further down the field. This isn't look, he's not coming in and installing the Mike Leach air raid. They're not going to go tempo. But I do think, too, to that point, call structures. How can we reduce this? Because let's be honest, you're going to lose Matthew Stafford at some point. You're going to have a younger quarterback at some point. So how can we meet them in the middle? How can we meet them and kind of get to their level so that we can build back up that acumen, but at least not start on hey, kind of like what Bo Nix had to go through with Sean Payton of hey, you're going to have to memorize the whole Bible. Not just the Bible verse, but the whole Bible. So it's not like you got to, and then you got to go out there and hopefully you can process it. If you can't, that's why we always see Bo Nix yelling at him to get the play calling. So I think, what does Kingsbury bring to you? He brings kind of that marriage of the gap scheme with some of these not even necessarily RPOs, but the quick game attached to some of these run actions, finding space, the kind of that spread way of doing things. Maybe, hey, call structures are a little different. How can we add tempo into certain things? I think you start looking at, he's going to add value, and it's going to be in where McVay is deficient, which is what I love about McVay, is he's always looking for that edge and where his circle of competence needs to get better.
Yeah, I was really shocked to see Washington's rushing attack, with him as the offensive play caller. I think that was surprising. It was surprising to me for sure. They were, top 5 in just calling running plays and top 10 in EPA per play and success rate when doing so, and turning Bill Krosky Merritt into, from a 7th rounder into a national conversation, a heck of a running back. So yeah, I think, losing Mike LaFleur, who was kind of brought in to move them into more of a gaps game blocking type area, and they lean into duo so much, and we've seen good success with it. And I always saw LaFleur's job is to convince McVay to stick with the running game a bit, have an advocate for that. So and then retaining Nate Scheelhaase. I don't know if you know a ton about him. Iowa State guy, been with the staff for a couple of years. It seems like he's going to move into the official offensive coordinator role, probably something that they had talked about. Do you know any tidbits on Scheelhaase that we should keep an eye out?
Well, that Iowa State system, I don't think people really understand. The Big 12, people are still anchor biased to the 2010s Big 12. I mean, I know I am. I was at Baylor from 11, 12, and 13. I saw Art Briles and that. I mean, I was on the defensive staff on that side, so it was a nightmare every day to know that you're going to get. Look, you had no ego when you were on that staff because you gave up 10 touchdowns just in a team setting, when you went good on good. So it was okay. And then you go out and you watch. So a lot of people think the Big 12 was like that. It's really transitioned into a hybrid league where there's 12 personnel. It marries really well with what Kingsbury was doing, which is probably a reason why you see this marriage of it. So if you're a Rams fan and you're like, man, this looks really weird. Well, okay. Scheelhaase comes from an Iowa State system, which is gun-centric with a 12 personnel package. And you're like, wait a second. I'm watching Commanders tape, and it's 12 personnel and it's gun centric. And I'm like, okay, the marriage is there. So I think like it makes sense. And Shieldhouse, obviously everybody talks about how just super cerebral he is. He's, he's that card drawer that has kind of come up. That's kind of that position that you want to be in. That's kind of the next guy in line. And so he understands the system. He's going to be able to bring creative ideas. I think that collegiate style of searching for space, we're in such a condensed setting in the NFL where the formations are so condensed all the time that sometimes these guys forget of like, oh yeah, wait, if we spread these guys out, we can find better isolation and we can create a little bit more of these kind of easy, like basically layups for the quarterback, because not everything's so hard and we're not always throwing outside, and the outside throws are not easy. Now you have a guy in Stafford that's he's the quarterback's favorite quarterback, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the marriage of Shieldhouse with Kingsbury and then McVay, as a defensive guy, I'm telling you right now, I would love to sit in those meetings.
That sounds fantastic. So, guys, you should be sold on this offense for sure. Obviously, the defense we'll keep an eye on, definitely. But there's one last question I just wanted to hit on. You say Stafford's going to retire eventually. I mean, Father Time is undefeated. It will happen. It's not going to be this year. I mean, are you seeing a young quarterback joining this team in the draft? Do you think it could happen? I mean, do you think they should pull the trigger on that?
I think you got to be really careful. This probably isn't the year to do it, though. If you wanted to find kind of a bargain later round quarterback, you're probably going to be able to find one. I mean, like a guy like a Carson Beck would do really good in a culture like that of just like, hey, kind of rewiring his way of looking at football, looking at things, because I think he'll fall. I don't think he's going to end up being a first rounder, but you've got guys that are always going to be value picks. It will be interesting to me for the Rams. Do you just go when Matthew Stafford retires and do you just fire sale it? Like just say, we're going to be terrible so we can get a first round pick like that's high, like, or which I don't think anybody in that having talked to people in that front office and then just knowing how McVay works, I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think at some point you have to create a plan of action. And I don't think a reclamation project or like finding our Sam Darnold is necessarily always the way that you want to go, even though it's kind of tending to kind of lean that way as we're seeing, unless somebody just falls in your lap where you're like, look, I know if I can get him here, we can help him out, or he's got the tools to do it. It's just the mental part needs to get fixed, or he just didn't have that offense didn't fit him. This offense fits us. I think it is, because here's the deal. In your division, you have a team that found their guy as Mr. Relevant. And then the other one, people forget a year ago, everybody was like, what the hell is Seattle doing? They got rid of Geno Smith to go with Sam Darnold, who always claps. So I think you have to be really careful. I would draft a quarterback maybe in that 4th round, just because you want somebody on that roster and you want to have some guy that you feel really, really comfortable with. Even if you go, maybe he's a 5th or 6th round guy, but you want to make sure that you have that guy on your roster. I think it would be okay, but you do need to start thinking of a plan.
Yeah, 100%. And I've been ringing the bell that Joe Burrow is going to become very, very unhappy at some point. So I'll keep ringing that bell.
Yeah, please don't give McVay to Joe Burrow. Please, please don't.
Oh man. Well, I mean, Stafford fell in his lap. I mean,
oh yeah.
I don't remember exactly what the conversation was around Stafford before that trade, but like these things come out of nowhere sometimes, and sometimes the NFL is the NBA, and they can make that happen.
Well, and leave it to the Rams. If it's going to happen, it'll be them, and they'll mortgage, because again, if you can get they've proven if you can get the quarterback, you can mortgage the future. Like, right, you can just say for 2 years we just won't draft anybody, and we can kind of do the song and dance with our 5th and 6th round picks. So it would not surprise me, but I do agree with you. Got to have some sort of a plan, and I guarantee you they do have one.
Yeah, 100%. And Cody Alexander, I could keep you here all day long, but I'm going to respect your time, get you out of here for sure. So that's all we've got for this episode of the Rams LAFB show. Please go check out Match Quarters. If you hear me talking about defense, I've learned it from this man. He is a former coach. He is a fantastic educator too, as every good coach is. So go check out all of that stuff over there. And is Let's Talk Ball available for the general public?
Oh yeah, no, that you can listen to Let's Talk Ball. So it's a football show that actually talks football. So that's what we do every week on Wednesday.
Yeah, fantastic show. I'm an avid listener of that as well. You'll see me retweeting all of his stuff. He does offer free knowledge out there too. Taking full advantage of that. We will be back with Aaron Coscarello, and we're going to talk about the lessons the Rams can learn from the teams that went to the Super Bowl, including shoring up that defense. So until then, guys, appreciate you tuning in.
Hey, Ramley, thank you so much for hanging out with us and watching the Rams LAFB show. Quickly before you go, got to tell you about our friends over at Sleeper. It's the #1 sports app right now, and you've got to download it because it's got so many great features that I want to tell you about. Aside from season-long fantasy, which is the best in the business, they've also got live score trackers, in-game updates, plus the live chat where you can actually communicate with other users right on the app. But perhaps the best feature, at least that I like, is the daily fantasy feature or the live pick'em. Just pick 2 to 8 players across any sport, baseball, basketball, hockey, obviously football and our Rams. You're going to choose a player, just choose more or less. Matthew Stafford, more or less passing yards. Kyron Williams, more or less rushing yards, more or less touchdowns. 2 to 8, you can win real money. So when you go to make your first deposit, make sure you use our promo code RAMSLAFB, and Sleeper's going to give you a match bonus up to $100. So you deposit $100, they're going to give you $100 free. You're now sitting at $200. You put in $10, they're going to match you $10. You're now sitting at $20. But on top of that, right now, Sleeper is offering all new user signups a $20 free entry, no deposit required. Go sign up. You're automatically invested $20 straight from Sleeper. But you can stack that offer with that match bonus offer to add more money. Just make sure to use that promo code RAMSLAFB. Go check out Sleeper. Download it today. Tell them the guys at the Rams LAFB sent you. And as always, Ramley, thank you so much for making us a part of your day.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.